So as an example, when Alaska was brought in, they brought in Hawaii at the same time because he had hang loose, Democrat Hawaii offsetting, hard driving, hunting, fishing Alaska, generally Republican, right? So there was a trade-off there, right? The other thing is, from my perspective, we're fighting, to get Alberta out from underneath the clutches of, federal taxes. Why do we want to jump into another federal system where we don't control, the taxation, and we're going to be paying U.S. income taxes and U.S. capital gains taxes and whatever other taxes they have instead of paying them bottle, right? So there's different, types of relationships you can have with the U.S. You can be a clearly associated state like Micronesia. You could be a territory like Puerto Rico, Guam, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, right? None of which pay federal income tax, by the way, right? Or you could be a U.S. state. So I think, what we're telling everybody, first step, let's get Alberta out of Canada and form, the independent Commonwealth of Alberta, under our own constitution. And then, once we're done, we're up and running, as a independent country, I'm going to retire. I'm going to go back to my ranch and play with my horses and play with my kid and have a wonderful life. Watching, my genius child get an engineering degree from Cambridge or whatever she's going to do, light the world on fire, right? And somebody else can fight the fight of whether we're going to join the United States and become a U.S. state. My goal is simply to get Alberta out of Canada, and then I'm going to go back to doing what I do and living my life and having a good time. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Now, I have to confess, I think I lied because I said that was my last question, but one more has occurred to me that I think is very important. Earlier on in the interview, when you were talking about all the complaints that Albertans have with this federal government that's allowing rampant immigration, that's taxing us to death, that's trampling on our constitutional rights, it occurred to me that, it's not just Albertans who feel that way, Jeff. There's a lot of people in Canada who feel that way. So if Alberta was to become independent, what do you think the political fallout would be for the rest of the country?
Well, I mean, I think Mark Carney, ends up being the last prime minister of Canada as we know it. I mean, if we're gone, Saskatchewan's going to go, right?
Yep.
And if Alberta's gone and Saskatchewan's gone, and we're no longer there for Quebec to suck dry like a vampire, and feed on, the husk of our corpse by sucking the lifeblood out of our, of Saskatchewan and Alberta anymore. Why the hell would Quebec want to stay? The only reason they stay is so that they can suck Alberta dry, right? So Quebec would probably go. We were laughing actually when we were in the U.S. and we were talking to U.S. officials because they were telling us what the whole thing about 51st state had always just been a troll by Donald Trump. And I said, oh, well, we know that in Canada, right? That it's a troll. I said, who in their right mind would want Quebec, right? You don't need that problem. We've been living with it for decades. It's horrible. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Who the hell would want Quebec to their country, right? And, and that's the reality of it. So Quebec's going to be off on its own, this isolated French enclave, in the northeast corner of North America, thinking that they could operate unilingually while all the rest of us are just say, well, good, we don't have to speak French anymore. We don't need French labels. By the way, our official language is English. So, you better make sure you have English on your labels if you want to export them from Quebec into anywhere else, et cetera, et cetera.